So in this third part of the lecture on sequence of real numbers, we will prove the sandwich theorem or the squeeze theorem, means the same theorem actually, and then continue to prove certain important limits. So the first theorem which we prove is the sandwich theorem, which states the following: that if you have three sequences un, vn and wn of real numbers which have the following property, that its terms are related by this type of inequality, that is, for every positive integer n, un is less than or equal to vn is less than or equal to wn. And suppose that un and vn are convergent un and wn are convergent sequences converging to the same limit L, then you can show that the sequence which is sandwiched between un and wn, that is the sequence vn, is also a convergent sequence and it converges to the same limit L. This is the result, and while proving it, we are assuming that this inequality is true for every positive integer n, but in practice we will see that it is sufficient if we have that this inequality holds after a certain number of finitely many terms of the given sequence. This is quite obvious because we have seen that the convergence of the sequence does not depend on the first finitely many terms of the sequence. We can manipulate them, and even then we can get the same result as far as convergence of the sequence is concerned. So let us start proving this result. It is just a straightforward proof using the properties of convergence. So we have to show that the sequence Vn converges to L. So we choose any epsilon greater than 0. First of all, notice that Un is convergent to L, and the sequence Wn is also convergent to L. So using that, for this particular epsilon greater than 0, by definition, we will be able to get two positive integers n1 and n2, so that the terms of the sequence un lie in an epsilon neighborhood of L after the n1th term, and the terms of the sequence wn lie in an epsilon neighborhood of L after the n2th term. So instead of writing mod un minus L less than epsilon, I have written it like this. That should not be a problem, and similarly for wn also. So now you know the trick how to manage if you have a finite number of inequalities which is holding after a certain term. What we do is that to ensure that these two inequalities hold simultaneously, we take the maximum of these two terms after which the inequalities are holding. So we take n to be maximum of n1 and 2. Then this will also be true and this will also be true for all n greater than equal to capital N. So let me just say it once. So if you take capital N to be maximum of n1 and n2, then for every little n greater than equal to capital N, L minus un, L minus epsilon will be less than un will be less than L plus epsilon, as well as L minus epsilon will be less than wn will be less than L plus epsilon. And also you have this fact that for every positive integer n, un is less than or equal to vn is less than or equal to wn. So you just write down these inequalities carefully. What do you get? You get L minus epsilon is less than un, that is less than or equal to vn from here. So you started from here. So L minus epsilon is less than un, that is less than or equal to vn, that is less than or equal to wn, and then wn is less than L plus epsilon. So you get this series of inequalities, and this is true for all little n greater than equal to capital N. So essentially what you're getting is that Vn is going to be in the epsilon neighborhood of L after the capital nth term. So for all little n greater than equal to capital N, mod of Vn minus L will be less than epsilon. That is what you get. So that is what was required, that you had any random epsilon greater than 0, you found a term, you found a capital N a positive integer, so that after the capital Nth term, Vn will lie in the epsilon neighborhood of L, and hence Vn is a convergent sequence and it actually converges to L. So this is your sandwich theorem or squeeze theorem if you like. Okay, so I want to make two observations before we go on to proving certain other limits. This is related to the divergence. So suppose you have two sequences un and vn, and suppose that for every positive integer n, un is less than or equal to vn. So what can we say about the behavior of one depending on the other as far as divergence goes is the following, that if Vn properly diverges to infinity, then uh, sorry, if Vn properly diverges to minus infinity, so it is becoming smaller and smaller, so that will automatically imply that Un will also properly diverge to minus infinity. Similarly, if Un is properly diverging to infinity, then since Vn is greater than equal to Un, Vn will also properly diverge to infinity. Now here I am using a notation which is very useful to write things in a terse manner, and that is some required actually every time if we insist on writing in English the whole concept which we wish to mean, it takes time. So we just write let limit n tending to infinity un equal to infinity. So what does this mean? This just means that the sequence un properly diverges to infinity. So as I was claiming that if you have a sequence which is dominated by another sequence. So that means term by turn, if un is less than or equal to vn, then we say that vn is the sequence which dominates the sequence un. And suppose the sequence un which is being dominated by vn, this itself diverges to infinity, then vn will also diverge to infinity. So let us see what is why this will happen. This will follow just from the definition. So un diverges to infinity means that for any positive integer, for any positive real number m, you will be able to get a positive integer capital N, so that after the nth term, un will become greater than m. This was the definition of un properly diverging to infinity. So you are able to get that for un, and un is less than or equal to vn. So automatically vn will also be greater than m for all little n greater than equal to capital N. So you can say this about the sequence vn, that given any positive real number capital M, you are able to get a positive integer capital N, so that after the nth term, Vn becomes greater than M. That means Vn is properly divergent to infinity, and we write that as limit n tending to infinity Vn equal to infinity. Please keep in mind that infinity here is not a number, and neither is infinity a number here. This infinity is being used to describe a concept, and that is precisely this. I hope I am clear. Similarly, if the dominating sequence diverges to minus infinity, then the dominated sequence will also diverge to minus infinity, because it is term by term less than or equal to this. This is becoming smaller and smaller, so this will automatically be so. So let us make it precise. Suppose that Vn is properly divergent to minus infinity. So what is the meaning of that? It means that for however small a uh, real number you take, you will be able to get a certain term after which the terms of the sequence will become less than that small number. So to express it, you say that for any m greater than 0, you will be able to get a positive integer n, so that whenever little n is greater than equal to capital N, Vn becomes less than minus m. So if you take very large m positive, minus m becomes very small. So this is perfectly all right. As a definition, this was the definition actually. There we had said for any negative number it becomes less than that after a certain stage. So instead of that saying it that way, we can also say is this way. That is why I have written it here, so that you don't get confused if you see it somewhere written like this, that Vn is properly divergent to minus infinity means precisely equal to this, precisely this statement, that for any m greater than 0, you will be able to get a positive integer n, so that for all little n greater than equal to capital N, I'm just repeating, Vn is less than minus m. Okay. So now what do you know about un? Un is less than or equal to Vn. So automatically un will also be less than minus m for all little n greater than equal to capital N. So essentially you have got for any m positive, after the capital Nth term, un is also becoming less than minus m. So that means un is diverging to minus infinity, and that is what you write like this: limit n tending to infinity, un is equal to minus infinity. So this is an observation which is very, very useful, and you should try to remember this, that if the dominated sequence diverges to minus infinity, uh, dominating sequence diverges to minus infinity, then the dominated sequence will also diverge to minus infinity. And if the dominated sequence diverges to infinity, then automatically the dominating sequence will also diverge to infinity. We will be using this without further comment later on. Okay, so as I promised, we will use sandwich theorem to prove certain important results. The first one is that suppose I take p to be any positive real number, then limit n tending to infinity 1 by n to the power p is equal to 0. So if p is a positive integer, then you obviously know the meaning of 1 by n to the power p. It is just n multiplied with itself p times. You also know the meaning of n to the power p when p is a fraction. Say for example, if I took p equal to 1 by m, then n to the power 1 by m means the mth root of n. And we had discussed this some time back when we were talking about real numbers, that there does exist such a mth root for every positive number. So if you take n to be a positive integer, its mth root exists. So I can always talk about n to the power 1 by m. So if I can talk about n to the power 1 by m, of course I can talk about n to the power any fraction also, positive fraction. So that is perfectly all right. So but here what we are saying, that we want any positive real number. So what is inherent in this statement is the expectation that you know what is the meaning of n to the power p. So what is n to the power p in general? It is just e to the power p log n, exponential of p log n, that is equal to n to the power p. So if you know what is the meaning of exponential, which we know actually, and at least working knowledge we have, and also of the log function. So n is a positive integer, so log n makes sense, and p is a real number, positive real number, so p log n makes sense. And if you just look at e to the power p log n, that also makes sense. So that is the meaning of n to the power p here. Okay, that at least you should know what is the meaning of that even before proceeding how to prove it. Proof is not going to be difficult. Okay, so how do you prove any such limit? For this, we have to take an epsilon greater than 0 and try to find a positive integer n dependent on the epsilon. Okay, so now let us see. Given any epsilon greater than 0, epsilon to the power 1 by p is a well-defined real number. So 1 by epsilon to the power 1 by p is also a well-defined real number. So why is it a well-defined real number? What is epsilon to the power 1 by p? As I said, this is equal to e to the power 1 by p log epsilon. Since epsilon is greater than 0, so log epsilon is a real number. So 1 by p into log epsilon is a real number. Therefore, e to the power 1 by p log epsilon is also a real number. Therefore, epsilon to the power 1 by p is a real number. Hence, its inverse, and it is non-zero obviously, because it is e to the power something, so it cannot be 0. So 1 by this is also a real number. Okay, now I'm saying that there is a choose n, capital N, positive integer so that n is greater than this. Why can you do this? You can do this by Archimedean property of real numbers. Just look at the real number 1 and look at 1 by epsilon to the power 1 by p. Then if you keep on adding 1 with itself, then after a certain stage it will become greater than 1 by epsilon to the power 1 by p, however large this number be. That you get from the Archimedean property of real numbers, and hence you can say that capital you will be able to get a capital N such that this happens. Okay, so how is this going to be useful? If you take little n greater than equal to capital N, then what can you say about little n? It is greater than 1 by epsilon to the power 1 by p. So take the pth power of this. You will get n to the power p is greater than 1 by epsilon. Take the reciprocal of that. You will get 1 by n to the power p is less than epsilon. So finally, what are you getting? You are getting that for any epsilon greater than 0, there is a capital N positive integer, so that for all little n greater than equal to capital N, 1 by n to the power p is less than epsilon. That means 1 by n to the power p belongs to the epsilon neighborhood of 0. 1 by n to the power p is always a positive number, so it will be greater than 0 and less than epsilon. So it belongs to minus epsilon to epsilon. Hence, by the definition of the limit of a sequence, you get that limit n tending to infinity 1 by n to the power p is equal to 0. A particular case of this is familiar to you for p is equal to 1, and now you have shown that it is actually true for any positive real number. Okay, so we will be using this limit very much. Let us look at the second limit in this direction. Okay, suppose x is a positive real number. Then you take the sequence x to the power 1 by n. We are claiming that this sequence is going to be convergent and its limit is going to be 1. Limit n tending to infinity, x to the power 1 by n is equal to 1. So let us just compare this. Just stop for a while and think about it a little bit more. Here what is happening is that you have fixed your p and you are varying your n. So what is this sequence going to look like? It's look like you start with 1. When n is equal to 1, it just becomes 1. So it is 1, 1 by 2 to the power p, 1 by 3 to the power p, 1 by 4. So I am going this way, but actually it is a decreasing sequence. So it becomes 1, 1 by 2 to the power p, 1 by 3 to the power p, 1 by 4 to the power p, and so on. So these are positive numbers which is tending towards 0. Whereas when I'm talking about this sequence, what I'm doing is that I'm fixing a positive number x, and then I'm looking at the nth root of x, which exists, we know, for every n. So what is this sequence going to look like? It looks like x, square root of x, cube root of x, fourth root of x, fifth root of x, and so on. So whatever be your value of x, if you keep on taking its various nth roots, then it tends towards 1. That is what you're trying to say. So if x is large, say for example x is some, let us not take a very large number, suppose you take x equal to 4 or something, then you will start with 4. Then if you look at the square root of 4, it will be 2. Then you have the cube root of 4, whatever it will be, you can find out using a calculator, an approximate number you will get. So you started with 4, then you decreased to 2, and then you will keep on decreasing towards 1. That is what you are trying to say. On the other hand, if you have something like half, then half is a number which is less than 1, but if you keep on taking its nth root, then you will see that it will increase to 1. That is what this sequence is telling you. So let us try to prove it. We will do it in 3 cases. First, we will prove it for x is equal to 1, which is a very trivial case, because if x is equal to 1, then the nth root of 1 is always 1. Right? Remember, you should not get confused about it here. When we are writing x to the power 1 by n, we always mean the positive root. Whatever, for n even, there is a possibility of having another number, another real number, whose, if you multiply it with, uh, itself n times, you will get 1. Say for example, if you look at the square root of 1, so actually there is a square root of 1 and there is a minus square root of 1. So when we write uh, 1 to the power half, say for example, we are just meaning 1. This I had explained some time back. I'm just repeating it again, that for any positive real number x, there is a unique positive real number y, so that y to the power n is equal to x, and that positive number is denoted by x to the power 1 by n. So there should be absolutely no confusion. These numbers are all positive numbers. Okay, so when x is equal to 1, 1 to the power 1 by n is always going to be 1. So you get the constant sequence 1, therefore the limit is going to be 1. So this is the trivial case. Now what we will do is we will prove it for x greater than 1 first. So the trick is the following, that you look at x to the power 1 by n minus 1. So if x is greater than 1, then x to the power 1 by n is greater than 1. This is clear, because x to the power 1 by n can be either greater than 1 or equal to 1 or less than 1. So if x to the power 1 by n is less than or equal to 1, then if you take the nth power, you would have got x less than or equal to 1. So that is not true. You are taking x greater than 1, so x to the power 1 by n will also be greater than 1. And we just take this number x to the power 1 by n minus 1 and call this Sn for all positive integers n. Then first of all, that is what I am insisting, is that Sn is positive, because x to the power 1 by n is greater than 1. So Sn is a positive number for all n greater than, for all positive integers n. Again, look at this expression. What do you get? You get x to the power 1 by n is equal to 1 plus Sn. So x is actually equal to 1 plus Sn to the power n. So if you use the binomial theorem, then if you just look at the first two terms of the binomial theorem, then 1 plus Sn to the power n will be strictly, will be greater than equal to, not strictly, will be greater than equal to 1 plus n Sn. Why not strictly greater? Because if n is equal to 1, then these two are actually equal. So 1 plus Sn to the power n is equal to, by binomial theorem, 1 plus n plus n choose 2 Sn squared plus n choose 3 Sn cube plus etc. n choose n Sn to the power n. So if we just take the first two terms, it will be uh, less than or equal to 1 plus Sn to the power n. So that is what we have written. So what does this mean? Just look at this thing here. Subtract by minus 1 first. So you get x minus 1 is greater than equal to n Sn. So you get Sn is less than or equal to x minus 1 divided by n. So what do you get finally? You get that 0 is less than Sn is less than or equal to x minus 1 divided by n. X minus 1 is a positive number. We have just now seen that limit n tending to infinity 1 by n is equal to 0. So what happens to this limit? This limit is going to 0, because you are just looking at the sequence 1 by n and term by term multiplying by a fixed constant x minus 1. You are fixing your x. So therefore the limit will still go to 0. And on the left hand side you have a constant sequence which takes the value 0 at every term. So that will also converge to 0. So what will happen to Sn by sandwich theorem? This will also converge to 0. I hope I have made myself clear. You have done some algebra here. You got that for every positive integer n, Sn is sandwiched between 0 and x minus 1 by n. So look at the sequence x minus 1 by n. Since the sequence 1 by n is a null sequence, so the sequence x minus 1 by n is also a null sequence. Again, the constant sequence 0 is a null sequence. So Sn, the sequence essence which is sandwiched between these two null sequences, is also a null sequence. So Sn is a null sequence, means limit n tending to infinity Sn is equal to 0. But what does that tell you about this? That limit n tending to infinity x to the power 1 by n minus 1 is equal to 0, which means that limit n tending to infinity x to the power 1 by n is equal to 1, right? Okay, so this we have proved for x greater than 1, and for x is equal to 1 it was trivial. So your proof is done for x greater than equal to 1. Now the only thing left out is when x is between 0 and 1. So if 0 is less than x less than 1, then what happens? So here we use a simple trick. We just let y is equal to 1 by x. Then since x was less than 1, so y becomes greater than 1. Clear? So for y greater than 1, we have already proved the result just now. So use that. So you get limit n tending to infinity y to the power 1 by n is equal to 1, which is a non-zero number. So you can just use that quotient formula for limits. You get limit n tending to infinity 1 by y to the power 1 by n is also equal to 1. 1 divided by 1, so that is just 1. Right? And what is 1 by y to the power 1 by n? That is precisely equal to x to the power 1 by n. So you again get limit n tending to infinity x to the power 1 by n is equal to 1. So you have proved that for any x greater than 0, limit n tending to infinity x to the power 1 by n is equal to 1. Okay. Next result is, so as I promised, we will be proving a certain number of limits in this particular lecture. The next result is that limit n tending to infinity, nth root of n is equal to 1. So this is slightly different again. Notice in the previous result, the sequence which you were considering, you had a given positive real number x, you fixed that, and then you were looking at the nth roots of x. So you were looking at x, square root of x, cube root of x, fourth root of x, and so on, and you proved that it's that particular sequence is convergent and it converges to 1. Now you are looking at the nth root of n. So what does that look like? If you take n equal to 1, then it is just 1. Then you get the square root of 2, cube root of 3, fourth root of 4, fifth root of 5, and so on. So it is just the nth root of n. This is a different sequence from the previous one, you realize, and this sequence is also convergent and it converges to 1. That is what we will be proving. The style of proof is similar to the previous proposition. What we do is that we look at nth root of n minus 1 and call this number xn for any positive integer n. So what do you know about nth root of n? Since n is greater than equal to 1, so nth root of n is also greater than equal to 1. So therefore, xn is greater than equal to 0. At least this much is true. Now you again manipulate as you did in the previous one. You write nth root of n is equal to 1 plus xn and then take the nth power of the expression. You get n is equal to 1 plus xn to the power n. Now what we will do is, here there is a back calculation involved as to how to use the binomial theorem. So by actually some trial and error, what one discovers is that if you just look at the second term of the binomial expression, then that is going to help us. So you have this 1 plus xn to the power n. You write down the binomial expansion of this. What will it look like? It will look like 1 plus n choose 1 xn plus n choose 2 xn squared plus n choose 3 xn cube plus etc. plus n choose n xn to the power n. That is your binomial expansion. And if you look at just the second term of that, then it is n choose 2 xn squared. I'm sorry, I don't want to say the second term. I want to say the degree 2 term, that is the third term actually. The first term is 1. So this is the third term. So in the third term, you are looking at n choose 2 xn squared. So n choose 2 is what? N factorial divided by 2 factorial into n minus 2 factorial. So n minus 2 factorial cancels out. You're just left with n into n minus 1 divided by 2. So this number is the second term, and obviously this is strictly less than 1 plus xn to the power n, because xn is a greater than equal to 0 number. So if xn is 0, even then this is less than, otherwise also this is going to be strictly less than this. So what does this mean? So let us write it down again. We have 0 less than or equal to xn, and from here I multiply 2 on this. First of all, I cancel out the n. That is why I took the second term, that I cancel out 2, and even then I will be left out with some n in the expression. So you get 2 divided by n minus 1 is greater than xn square, provided n minus 1 is not 0. So xn is going to be less than square root of 2 divided by n minus 1. I think it is clear. You have cancelled out n, and then you take the square root, you will get xn is less than square root of this. Provided, of course, that when you are dividing by n minus 1, so n cannot be equal to 1. So you have to make that provision here, that this inequality you will get for all positive integers greater than or equal to 2. So as I said when I was talking about sandwich theorem, this is not such a big deal. After the second term of the sequence, you are getting such a situation. So now look at the constant sequence 0, that is a null sequence, and what is happening about this? You know that limit m tending to infinity 1 by square root of m is equal to 0. We proved that was our first one, right? So here p is equal to half. So we know that limit n tending to infinity 1 by root n, this is equal to 0. So this is equal to 0. Now all you are doing is You are just multiplying this by square root of 2, so you will still get a null sequence. You realize that these two are the same sequences. Here it started with 1 and here it is also starting with 1. It is n minus 1, but n is greater than equal to 2. So this sequence is precisely this sequence multiplied by root 2. So since this one is a null sequence, this is also a null sequence. So xn is sandwiched between two null sequences. So xn is going to be a null sequence. So xn is a null sequence means what? Limit n tending to infinity xn is equal to 0. But that means that limit n tending to infinity nth root of n is equal to 1. That's all. So we get this limit also. Okay. Next, we discuss a very important limit. This is also going to be useful when we talk about geometric series and later on also. So we do it in details. So instead of just looking at a particular case, I am talking about all possible cases. So see how I have written it. I have written limit n tending to infinity x to the power n. So my x is fixed. This is going to be equal to 0 if mod x is less than 1. So when mod x is less than 1, limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is a null sequence. This looks like what? It looks like x, x square, x cube, x to the power 4 and so on. So that sequence is going to be a null sequence. When x is equal to 1, it is going to be equal to 1. It's obvious actually. And when x is greater than 1, then it diverges to infinity. So that we express as limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is equal to infinity when x is greater than 1. So it diverges to infinity when x is greater than 1. What are the cases which are left out now? The case which is left out is, see, when mod x is less than 1 means in the open interval minus 1 to 1. So in the open interval minus 1 to 1, if you choose any x, then the given sequence is a null sequence. At the point 1, it is the constant sequence 1, so it is going to converge to 1. If it is greater than 1, then it is divergent to infinity. So what happens when x is equal to minus 1? That is left out. And what happens when x is less than minus 1? That is left out. So when x is equal to minus 1, you have seen this sequence before. This is actually a oscillatory sequence with finite oscillation. And when x is less than minus 1, then it is again an oscillatory sequence with infinite oscillation. So you can talk about what is going to happen to the sequence x to the power n for any given x on the real line. This is going to be extremely necessary for us when we talk about geometric series first of all, and later on in the next when we start talking about functions, then when we talk about Taylor series, this is going to be very useful. So let us see how to prove it. We have to go slowly. So first of all, there are several cases, so therefore the proof will be long. So first of all, suppose x is equal to 0. So I have written it like this. The first case we consider is when mod x is less than 1. And that we subdivide in two parts, when x is equal to 0 and when x is not equal to 0. Mod x less than 1 means it is in the open interval minus 1 to 1. So when x is equal to 0, then x to the power n is equal to 0, obviously, for every positive integer n. So you are just getting the constant sequence 0. Therefore, the limit is going to be 0. So at least this one is satisfied for x is equal to 0. Now, how to handle the case when mod x is less than 1, that is, it lies in the open interval minus 1 to 1, and x is not 0. So here we employ a trick. Since mod x is less than 1, 1 divided by mod x is going to be greater than 1. So you let h be equal to 1 divided by mod x minus 1. This is okay. Just 1 divided by mod x is greater than 1. So you look at 1 divided by mod x minus 1, then this number you call h, and that is clearly greater than 0. And what does this mean? This means that mod x is, just look at it carefully, you get 1 by mod x is equal to 1 plus h, take the reciprocal, so you get mod x is equal to 1 divided by 1 plus h. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we look at 1 plus h to the power n, because we have to talk about mod x to the power n and make an estimate of that. So we look at 1 plus h to the power n. And again, there is some trial and error involved here, and we will be doing two more limits of the same type so that you get the idea from where this choice of which term we should take will come. Okay, so you look at the second term now in the binomial expansion, that is n choose 1 h. Then that is going to be strictly less than 1 plus h to the power n. And what is this? N choose 1 means n factorial divided by 1 factorial into n minus 1 factorial. So n minus 1 factorial cancels out and you are just left with n. So you get 1 plus h to the power n is greater than nh. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that mod x to the power n, which was equal to 1 by 1 plus h to the power n, is now less than 1 by nh for all n. And obviously mod x to the power n is going to be greater than 0 because mod x is a positive number. Mod x is not 0. So mod x is a positive number. So its nth power is also going to be a positive number. So again, you have sandwiched your the sequence in which you are interested in between two null sequences. Actually, you're not interested in mod x to the power n, but we will come to that. So you have got that mod x to the power n is sandwiched between the null sequence, actually the constant sequence 0, and this sequence. Here 1 by h is a fixed scalar, right? Your x is fixed. You have some fixed x which is having the property that it is not equal to 0 and its modulus is less than 1. So 1 by h is a fixed number. And what do you know about 1 by n? Limit n tending to infinity 1 by n is 0. So therefore limit n tending to infinity 1 by n into h is also 0. So what do you get? That mod x to the power n is sandwiched between two null sequences. So by sandwich theorem, you get that limit n tending to infinity mod x to the power n is equal to 0. But this immediately implies that limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is equal to 0, because mod x to the power n is just modulus of x to the power n. And we saw that this in the last lecture, I think that if the modulus of a sequence is a null sequence, then the original sequence is also a null sequence. So using that property, we get that limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is equal to 0. So at least this first part you have proved. Second part is obvious actually. So for x is equal to 1, the sequence x to the power n is a constant sequence, taking the value 1 at each term, and hence its limit is going to be equal to 1. So now we want to talk about what happens when x is greater than 1. Our claim is that when x is greater than 1, then this diverges to infinity, and this is not an extraordinary claim. If you like, you can keep in mind some example. Suppose easiest one which comes to my mind is x is equal to 2, suppose. Then what is your sequence going to look like? It looks like 2, 2 squared, 2 cubed, to the power 4, etc. So it keeps on increasing. That is all we want to show. So let us see how to do it. So suppose x is greater than 1. Then again what you do is write x minus 1 to be equal to h. Then clearly h is positive because x is greater than 1. And also if you look at x to the power n, that is just equal to 1 plus h to the power n from here, right? And again 1 plus h to the power n is greater than the second term of the binomial expansion, so it is greater than nh. for all n in n. So now I think it is almost obvious. So if you take any positive real number m, then look at m divided by h. H is positive, so that is perfectly all right. So m divided by h is going to be a positive real number. Look at box of m divided by h. What is box of m divided by h? It means that look at the greatest integer less than or equal to m divided by h. We have seen that for any real number, let us call it y, for any real number y, there is a unique integer p, say, so that p minus 1 less than or equal to y less than p. We saw this some time back. So always you will be able to get a uh, unique integer so that p minus 1 is less than or equal to y is less than p. So that p minus 1, which is the greatest integer less than or equal to y, is denoted by box y. So I have chosen any, I want to show that limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is infinity. That is, I want to show that the sequence x to the power n is diverging to infinity. Therefore, I have chosen any positive number m. And then I'm looking at the positive number m divided by h. And I let my little n be the integer which is greater than the box of m divided by h plus 1. Box of m divided by h is the greatest integer less than equal to m by h. So if I look at box of m divided by h plus 1, that will become greater than m by h. This is clear, I hope. Box of m divided by h was a integer and it was the greatest integer which was less than or equal to x. So if you add 1 to it, it will become an integer which is greater than m by h. This is okay. So if I take this as my capital N, which I have to find, then I get that n is automatically greater than m divided by h. So I get nh is greater than m. So that means what? That means from this, what do you say? Expression, x to the power n becomes greater than m. So what have you shown? That for any positive integer, for any positive real number m, you are able to get a positive integer, so that if n is greater than that positive integer, then x to the power n has to be greater than m. So by definition, this means that x to the power n diverges to infinity. So you have also proved this case. Okay, so we are left out with the case when x is equal to minus 1 and when x is less than minus 1. So when x is equal to minus 1, this is also a known sequence to us. You look at minus 1 to the power n, that looks like what? That looks like minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1, minus 1, 1, and so on. So it is an oscillatory sequence and its range is exactly minus 1, comma 1, this set containing the points minus 1 and 1. Okay, so it is a finitely oscillatory sequence. Finally, suppose x is less than minus 1. Then what can you say about modulus of x? Modulus of x is equal to minus x. So that is greater than 1. Now for any real number greater than 1, we know that it is diverging to infinity. Just now we saw that for any real number greater than 1, the sequence x to the power n diverges to infinity. So we will use that fact. Mod x is my real number now. It is greater than 1. So it diverges to limit n tending to infinity. Mod x to the power n is going to be infinity. That is, mod x to the power n is a divergent sequence to infinity. That means what? That means that for any m greater than 0, any positive real number m, I will be able to get a positive integer n, so that for all little n greater than equal to capital N, mod x to the power n is greater than m, because it is diverging to infinity. But now what is mod x to the power n? Mod x is equal to minus x. So minus x to the power n means minus 1 to the power n x to the power n. So what is the meaning of this? It means that when I take my little n greater than equal to capital N, if n is odd, then this becomes minus, right? So minus x to the power n is greater than m, which means x to the power n is less than minus m. And when n is even, then x to the power n is greater than m. So imagine your real line here. Take any random positive real number m. So x, when n is even, x to the power n will become greater than m, and when n is odd, then x to the power n will become less than minus m, and this you will go on getting after the capital nth term. So therefore your sequence is oscillating to numbers greater than m and less than minus m. It will keep on increasing the numbers which you get, and they will go on, the modulus will keep on increasing, and you will get that for every even n, x to the power n will become a large number, and for every n odd, x to the power n will become a very small number, and this oscillation will keep on going on. So what you get is a infinitely oscillatory sequence. Again, if you have I think it is the argument is very straightforward if you just sit down and write it. And if you want to visualize it, you just imagine with a fixed number. So again, minus 2 is a very uh, simple, easy to think number. So if you look at minus 2 and write down x equal to minus 2 and write down the sequence x to the power n, how does it look like? It looks like you start with minus 2, then you will get 4, and then you will get minus 8, and then you will get 16, and then you will get minus 32, and then you will get 64. Again, you'll get minus 128, and so on. So you just keep on getting negative, then positive, then negative, then positive numbers, and the modulus of those numbers keep increasing. So you get an infinitely oscillatory sequence. I hope I am clear. So this is our result. Okay. Next result, and what I told you that I will be able to give you some sort of a pattern which you will understand why we should choose a particular term in the binomial theorem by looking at two more examples. So suppose for this I am not taking any random x, I am just fixing my attention to mod x less than 1. Then I want to say that limit n tending to infinity n times x to the power n, that is also equal to 0. Remember, the previous result was essentially that if mod x is less than 1, then limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is equal to 0. This is the crucial one. The others are interesting when we talk about Taylor series, and this one is going to be useful when we talk about geometric series. Okay, so here what did we say? That when a mod x was less than 1, then limit n tending to infinity x to the power n is equal to 0. Very good. So in the next result, we say that if mod x is less than 1, then limit n tending to infinity n x to the power n is also equal to 0. So this is also going to be a null sequence. Again, we do it in two parts. The first part is when x is equal to 0. So when x is equal to 0, obviously the given sequence is a null sequence. Nx to the power n will be 0 for all n, and hence the limit is going to be 0. Okay, so this was a trivial one. Now suppose mod x is less than 1 and x is not 0. So again you see, you choose the same h as we did in the previous proof. What do? You look at 1 by mod x. 1 by mod x is a number which is greater than 1. So you look at 1 by mod x minus 1. So this number you call h, then h is greater than 0. And what is uh, mod x? Mod x is going to be, you do the same manipulation here, just add 1 on both sides, you get 1 plus h is equal to 1 by mod x. Take the reciprocal, you get mod x is equal to 1 by 1 plus h. So therefore, if you look at your given sequence and take the modulus of that, n is a positive number, so it will come out of the modulus. You get n into mod x to the power n is equal to n divided by 1 plus h to the power n. So in the previous one, you did not have a n in the numerator. Now you are getting an n in the numerator because you are multiplying by n. So because of this numerator n, we want to estimate what is happening to 1 by 1 plus h to the power n. All right. So that is written here. So to estimate that, we would like to get something dependent on n. And therefore, we look at the third term of the binomial expansion, because we will get a something of the order of n square there, and we will be able to manage. So let me tell it precisely. By binomial theorem, you will have 1 plus h to the power n is greater than n choose to h square, right? And that is again equal to n into n minus 1 divided by factorial to h squared, because n choose 2 just means this. I think I told you before also, you are used to writing this as the expression nc2, and this is another expression for the same thing, and this is what we use, and this means n factorial divided by 2 factorial into n minus 2 factorial. So n minus 2 factorial cancels out, and in the numerator you are left out with n into n minus 1, and in the denominator you have 2 factorial. So you get n into n minus 1 by factorial to h square. Now again, here we will apply a trick. What is the trick? I will divide and multiply by n square. So I get n into n minus 1 divided by n squared into n squared h squared divided by 2. This is going to be useful. So let us see how. Look at this number n into n minus 1 by n square. What is happening? 1 n will cancel out. So you are just left with n minus 1 divided by n. So you can write that as 1 minus 1 by n, right? And 1 minus 1 by n you can write as greater than 1 minus 1 by n into 1 minus 2 by n. Why can you do that? Because 1 minus 2 by n, this number is always less than 1. So you're just multiplying 1 minus 1 by n on both sides of that. So you get 1 minus 1 by n is greater than this, right? Because this one, 1 minus 2 by n is less than 1. So you will get this much. And I want to say that this is greater than 1 by 2 square. I want to make an estimate like this. This is obviously not true always. So for this, when will it be true? It will be true if your 2 by n is less than half, because uh, if 2 by n is less than half, then minus 2 by n is greater than minus half. So 1 minus 2 by n is greater than 1 minus half, that is 1 minus 2 by n is greater than half. And 2 by n, why am I focusing on 2 by n? Because 2 by n is greater than 1 by n. So if I want such an inequality, I do want such an inequality. So I would have to fix my n so that n is not any positive integer, but a positive integer, so that 2 by n is less than half. That means n is greater than 4. So if n is greater than 4, then 1 minus 1 by n will also be greater than half, and 1 minus 2 by n will also be greater than half. So 1 minus 1 by n into 1 minus 2 by n will be greater than 1 by 2 squared. You can see from here. So why did we bother about that? We had this n into n minus 1 by n square here. So I want to estimate this by a number. So for that we worked hard and did this thing. but we had to compromise. We cannot do it for every positive integer. We can only do it for positive integers greater than 4. So what do we get? Again, let us go back. 1 plus h to the power n is greater than, instead of n into n minus 1 by n squared, I am writing 1 by 2 squared into, I am sorry, n squared h squared by 2, right? Is it clear? Here I am replacing this by 1 by 2 squared, and I am just repeating this again. So this becomes 1 by 2 squared into n squared h squared by 2. So what do you get? You get 1 plus h to the power n is equal to n squared h squared by 2 cube. What is nice about this is h was a fixed number. X is fixed. X is some non-zero real number, so that mod x is less than 1. 2 is obviously a constant. So this guy is a constant, and therefore what you get is that if you write down modulus of n x to the power n, that is obviously greater than 0, it becomes less than n times 1 by 1 plus h to the power n, right? So let us not forget it. Unfortunately, the proof is long. So n, this is actually equal to this, and 1 plus h to the power n, the reciprocal of that is now going to be less than, right? So if I write this down carefully, I will get, I got this 1 plus h to the power n is greater than this. So 1 by 1 plus h to the power n is going to be less than 2 cube divided by n square h square. So I am writing that down, that so I should have yeah, I'm correct, sorry. So I have this modulus of n x to the power n, that means equal to n into 1 by 1 plus h to the power n. So that is less than n into 2 cube divided by n square h squared, because we have shown this, right? And that is not true always. It is only true for all positive integers greater than 4. After you get this, then you do some simple calculation. Now you see why you wanted the second term, because I have a n here. So even if I cancel this out, I get a 1 by n. So I have this constant 2 cube divided by h squared into 1 by n. So this is a null sequence. This tends to 0 as n tends to infinity, and 0 means the constant sequence 0. So that is obviously a null sequence. So the sequence which is sandwiched between them is also a null sequence. So therefore you are getting limit n tending to infinity n times mod x to the power n equal to 0. But again, you saw that if the absolute value of a sequence is a null sequence, meaning if you take the absolute value of each term of a given sequence, and if that sequence become a null sequence, then the original sequence is also a null sequence. So therefore, since limit n tending to infinity n into mod x to the power n is equal to 0, we also get limit n tending to infinity n x to the power n is equal to 0. I hope this is okay. And we do one more just to get the hang of the way the proof is uh, being developed, so that you understand that this is not arbitrary. So what am I trying to prove now? That instead of taking n, now I'm looking at n square. Again, if mod x is less than 1, then limit n tending to infinity n squared x to the power n will also be equal to 0. This is I want to prove. So proof is similar. So you just focus on the similarities, you will get the pattern. First you let x equal to 0, then every term of the sequence is 0. Therefore, the limit is also 0. Next you assume that mod x is less than 1 and x is non-zero. Again, you take h to be equal to 1 by mod x minus 1. So as you saw that h is going to be a positive number, and just by looking at this equality, you get that mod x is equal to 1 by 1 plus h. So n squared times mod x to the power n, that is what you need, is going to be equal to n squared divided by 1 plus h to the power n. So you want to make 1 by 1 plus h to the power n to be small enough. So for that, you write down the binomial theorem again, uh, use the binomial theorem, sorry, and you write down the fact that the fourth term now is going to be less than 1 plus h to the power n. So 1 plus h to the power n is greater than n choose 3 h cube. So that will be equal to what? N factorial divided by 3 factorial into n minus 3 factorial into h cube. So n minus 3 factorial will cancel out and you will be left with n into n minus 1 into n minus 2 divided by 3 factorial into h cube. Now what you will do, as in the previous case, you multiply and divide by n cube. There you had done a multiplication and division by n square. Here you do by n cube just because there are 3 terms involved. So you get something like this, n cube h cube by 3 factorial. This is what we are going to just leave out for the time being, and this we will estimate by a number as in the previous case. So you first notice that 1 n will cancel out. So it will become n into n minus 1 into n minus 2 by n cube is equal to n minus 1 into n minus 2 by n square. And that is equal to 1 minus n, 1 minus 1 by n into 1 minus 2 by n. Now notice that 1 minus 3 by n is obviously less than 1. So 1 minus 1 by n into 1 minus 2 by n into 1 minus 3 by n, this multiplication is going to be less than 1 minus 1 by n into 1 minus 2 by n. It is clear? Again, each of this 1 by n, 2 by n, 3 by n, if they are less than half, then 1 minus 1 by n will be greater than 1 minus half, that is half. 1 minus 2 by n will be greater than 1 minus half, that is half. And 1 minus 3 by n will also be greater than 1 minus half, that is half. So this multiplication will be greater than 1 by 2 cube, provided you can ensure that 1 by n, 2 by n and 3 by n are all less than half. So there is a relation between them. So what is the relation? That 1 by n is less than 2 by n is less than 3 by n. So if I take only, if I just focus on this one, that 3 by n is less than half, the other two will automatically follow. So if I take my n to be greater than 6, which is obvious from here, then this last inequality will be true. So now what we will do is, instead of this, we are going to replace it by 1 by 2 cube, and that will be uh, only for n greater than 6. So what did we got? We got that 1 plus h to the power n is now going to be greater than, right? In the previous slide, you got a greater than. So it is greater than 1 by 2 cube into n cube h cube by 3 factorial. That we had left static. And this is true for all n in n, for all positive integers which are greater than 6. Okay. So what is, now what is the final thing? We get 0 is less than modulus of n squared x to the power n. Very good. That was equal to what? That was equal to n squared divided by 1 plus h to the power n, right? So we get n squared divided by 1 plus h to the power n, and that is less than n squared we leave as it is, and 1 by 1 plus h to the power n will become less than 2 cube into 3 factorial divided by n cube h cube. Now you notice why you had to take this fourth term so that n cube comes into picture, because there was an n squared here. You cancel this out, you get a 1 by n. You want such a small number here. If you did not take this, then you would have got a constant which would not have helped you at all. So you take this suitably so that you get some constant. 2 cube is 8, right? So 8 into 6 is 48. That is okay. So 48 by h cube into 1 by n. So you get what? That n squared x to the power n modulus of that is sandwiched between 0 and a constant times 1 by n for all positive integers greater than 6. That is sufficient to tell you that since this is a null sequence, some constant times 1 by n, and this is also a null sequence, so therefore limit n tending to infinity n squared into x to the power n, modulus of that is also going to be 0. Again the same argument that since the modulus is a null sequence, so if you remove the modulus also, you will get a null sequence. So limit n tending to infinity n squared x to the power n is also going to be equal to 0. I hope I have been able to show you the pattern in these limits so that you can do it on your own also. Say for, and you don't have to do it for general case, or at least one more you can try and see that if mod x is less than 1, then limit n tending to infinity n cube x to the power n is also going to be 0. This you can try and see on your own. And in the next lecture, what we will do is we will prove some more results on limits, especially Cauchy's limit theorems, and depending on how much time it takes, we will do some more work, or otherwise we will stop there. So for the time being, today let us stop.